Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in this afternoon. Hit subscribe right now. Tell everyone you know about these live streams because they're absolutely fantastic. Pound for pound, the best live stream, one of the best, if not the best live stream on YouTube. I only have close to 117,000 subs. I'm on my way to 120,000 subscribers. We're on our way to 120,000 subscribers. Hit subscribe right now. Tell everyone about H.A. Goodman on YouTube. To my super chat, thank you so very much. If you feel, ladies and gentlemen, like you are Eric H526, thank you so very, very much. Eric H526, thank you so very, very much. Eric H526. Hello, Hal, and everyone. Love you all. Have a great week. You have the best channel on YouTube, and always glad to help out my pen pal, Hal. Love you, brother. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you, everyone. Eric has an amazing, amazing, amazing gamer channel. So check out Eric's work. It's fantastic. If you're into gaming, just click on his channel right now. Let's go ahead, go to channel. He has 157 subs. Let's get him to 1,000 subs today. Why not? AC Yor, thank you, AC Yor. To all my moderators, thank you. There's his channel, Eric H526. Everyone subscribe to it. Especially if you're into gaming, and he plays, like, you know, all different games, and it's like a, you know, live action. It's awesome. Thank you, everyone. So evolving, thank you everyone. So let's get started. I'll give you a quick rundown to the people who like my uploads. The first half an hour is going to get to everything, but I'll give you a quick rundown in like 3 minutes, okay? Number one, Trump is right. He's right about Mueller meddling in the election, in the midterms. Not going to work out. Republicans will still lose. Democrats will still lose because Republicans have Trump's energy, passion, his base. Not only his base, but the average Republican knows that Democrats are vile. They blame Russia, they cheat, they utilize identity politics, and then are guilty of racism themselves and sexism and all that stuff, homophobia, all that stuff. They blame Russia without any evidence. The NSA is only moderately confident. They are a combination of social justice warriors and neoconservatives like Bill Kristol and Max Boot and Robert Kagan and all of them. They're the same people who will be like, who would say, oh my goodness, you know, Trump didn't retaliate against this country. He didn't retaliate against Putin, or he didn't retaliate against Assad, or he didn't retaliate against whatever threat that they want to prop up from the standpoint of propaganda. And then they'll forget about Bernie Sanders being cheated. Thank you, Eric Lunderstad. Everyone subscribe to Eric H526's channel. But what's taking place is this. The Mueller probe is supposed to be this bipartisan or nonpartisan thing. Yet Democrats are so giddy and happy every single time something takes place. They're so happy. They desperately want to end Trump's tenure in office. They have nothing. They have no evidence. Nothing. The indictments have zero to do. Could you imagine if there was a special counsel for Clinton's emails? She'll eventually get indicted. But could you imagine if there was a special counsel? You would see indictments for Uma Abedin for lying. Well, let's put it this way. We already had in the FBI probe, there was already one technician who lied. They caught the person lying. This is in the IG report. And nothing happened to the person. Coinkydink. What a coincidence. But basically, what's taking place is this. So 4 minutes in, the Mueller probe is basically opposition research / some kind of a taxpayer-funded Democratic Party ploy based on flawed, quote-unquote, intelligence, based on a Steele dossier that was purchased by Hillary Clinton, and a Mueller probe that was started because of Comey's leaky memos. He leaked classified information. And thank you, Word Will, thank you. Everybody, yes, sub to Eric H526. He has a great channel. And so they have nothing in terms of evidence, but what they need is the Mueller probe, because they don't have, ladies and gentlemen, they don't have any enthusiasm and passion. People don't say, I'm voting Democrat because there's this immigration bill that they're pushing. They don't say, I'm voting Democrat because we're going to bring home our soldiers from war. The people who want to bring home our soldiers from war are very likely voting for Trump. He's the less hawkish. He's less inclined. His initial reaction was to bring home soldiers from Afghanistan, but of course, all his... Thank you, Blue Lady 22. Thank you so very much. Thank you for the kind words. But of course, all the intelligence officials and all his advisors said no. Of course, if you bring home American soldiers from where they're stationed right now, it will be tough on the locals, the local population. That's obvious. It will be difficult. But that's why after 18, 16, 17 years, you should have already gone ahead and built up the military, the Afghan military or the Iraqi military. You should have built up certain factions that are loyal to the United States or whatever. You should have built a framework ready so that when you do leave, the country doesn't descend into chaos and turmoil, because you can't stay there forever. And Dave, I have. And they're talking about, if you're talking about where soldiers are stationed right now, bring home all 10,000 from Afghanistan. Bring home all 5,000 from Iraq. So really quickly, before we get to the midterms they're still going to lose. And there are these hilarious articles like, oh yeah, Republicans, there's not going to be a red wave and Trump's hurting things because Republican voters aren't going to turn out. Democrats have lost 8 out of 11 contests and 8 out of 10 where they have to face an actual Republican. In special elections, they've lost 8 out of 11 or 8 out of 10 when there's a Republican challenger. And of course, of course, the turnout is more than prior years. Well, what do you expect? You have non-stop media collusion. MSNBC, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times. They're all Democratic Party like operatives. But let's just U.S. soldiers stationed around the world. Okay, so this is a map where, okay, so I'm sorry, we have 6,000 in Iraq. Why did I say 5,000? We have 6,000 in Iraq. We have 3,500 in Poland. If you want to keep our soldiers, 3,500 in Poland, I want everyone brought home, but it's not a war zone in Poland. I want everyone brought home, especially in war zones. So 6,000 in Iraq, almost 11,000 in Afghanistan. Bring them home. Bring home the 17,000 soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan. Bring home all our soldiers in Poland, everywhere. We have 250 National Guardsmen in Ukraine. 200. No, bring them home. We have Army Rangers and Special Forces in Syria. Bring them home. Just bring them home. 15,000 in Kuwait. I understand. I get that. Says here 40 soldiers in Somalia. Bring them home. So just bring home all our soldiers. We have close to 17,000 in Iraq and Afghanistan. All of them. All of these soldiers should be at home with their families. This is according to Business Insider. We have 1.3 million men and women on active duty and 450,000 stationed overseas. In war zones, we should end these wars and bring them home. You'll never get anyone on the left to say that. They might want that, but you won't have liberal politicians speak like that because they can't. They're not allowed to. They're not allowed to. You can't have, and this is the funny thing also, the left is like single payer, as if the Democratic Party will ever follow through on that. They're lying. They're not going to go ahead and liberal politicians or Democratic politicians, if they wanted single payer, they wouldn't have cheated Bernie Sanders, number one. So they're lying. Number two, they didn't learn anything from cheating Bernie Sanders. The only thing they learned was that it works. The progressives fell in line, by and large. Everyone will go ahead, no matter what happens, and listen to the same usual pundits who then funnel all their rage and all their hopes and aspirations into, well, we got to push for single payer. Well, what about breaking up too big to fail banks? What about Glass-Steagall, reinstating Glass-Steagall? What about bringing home soldiers from war? No. We have to extend an olive branch to the establishment because the establishment is okay with that now. You have people, Kamala Harris is talking about it. So it's okay. Well, let's listen. This is a PolitiFact. How expensive would single payer system be? So this all relates to Trump, and we'll get to Sessions. So basically, Trump wants Sessions to fire Robert Mueller and start indicting people because he's like, hey, these people committed crimes. He said that today. And he called out the Mueller team. This is Politico. Trump accuses Mueller team of midterm meddling, which they are. They are. A team of investigators working on special counsel Robert Mueller's Russia investigation are looking to impact this November midterm election. Of course they are. President Donald Trump claimed this morning. Of course they are. Labeling Mueller's team a national disgrace. Of course it is a national disgrace. 17 Democrats. You can't find one Republican. You can't find one person who donates to Trump. You have people who worked for the Clinton Foundation or defended the Clinton Foundation. You have people who... So you can't find one person? Then this is PolitiFact. How expensive would single-payer system be? During remarks at the White House to a group of Republican senators, President Donald Trump pushed the visiting lawmakers to repeal and replace legislation for the Affordable Care Act. Trump warned that some Democrats are becoming increasingly interested in pursuing a single-payer health insurance system in which the federal government, rather than private insurers, pays all medical expenses. The Democrats have gone too far left. They're looking for single-payer. That's what they want. But you can't. But on a side note, you can't have single payer with 17,000 soldiers in Iraq and Afghanistan and 450,000 soldiers abroad. You can't. It's not just about slashing the military budget. It's bringing them home. There are costs associated with there are unforeseen costs associated with, you can't just budget for all the medical care and all the possible scenarios that take place. We're still paying what, 7.9 trillion, around $7 trillion by 2053 in interest for the wars. The Yahtzee won. Poland offered US $2 billion to have the base in Poland. Good deal. Friends with benefits. I am biased. I was born in Poland. The Yahtzee won. And you know what? Poland is not a war zone. So I want all our soldiers everywhere, every country, to be home with their families, but at least bring home the soldiers. Bring home the soldiers from war zones. But I had a great friend from Poland, the Yahtzee one, who was a water polo athlete, and he's just awesome. He was awesome, great guy. The Yahtzee won. Thank you so very much. The Yahtzee won as always. Thank you for your support as always. Thank you. On single payers, rising popularity among Democrats. It's not. It is. The Democrats are not serious about it, and they're not going to be persuaded from within, because if they were serious, it has to be sanctioned by Hillary and Bill. Once Hillary and Bill are talking about it, then the Democratic Party will be talking about it. Otherwise, it's just a ploy. When they lose in the midterms, they're not going to be talking about single payer ever again. You can rest assured about that. Trump has a point, according to a Pew Research survey released in July. Asked whether it's the federal government's responsibility to make sure all Americans have health coverage, 83% of Democrats said yes. And of that number, 52% said they favored a single-payer system. Only 52% of Democrats. So, like half of Democrats. That's a poll. It's probably more so now, but that was in 2017. By contrast, among Republicans, only 12% support. So you're going to have to defeat them. And you can't do that by focusing on Russia and by having Max Boot and Bill Kristol as the foreign policy gurus of your political party. Ain't going to happen. And Mueller interfering in the midterms, it's just basically the same. You can't be serious about single payer and say, oh yeah, Russia interfered in the election. Doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. A single payer system would mirror what Medicare does for people who have turned 65. Supporters say such a plan would cut administrative costs administrative costs. How would it cut administrative costs if the government's always more expensive or more costly? You have 70 tens of thousands of dollars for furniture in different government agencies. But critics, including most Republicans, warn that such a plan costs too much. I understand when people say, well, we don't question how much we spend on wars. Yeah, and I agree with that statement. And also, you should probably also say right after that, bring home soldiers from war. We wondered whether Trump was also right about his costs. However, we weren't exactly sure what he meant. Did he mean single-payer costs would cost more than total revenues, what the federal treasury takes in every year, or did he mean only they would cost more than what the federal government already spends on healthcare? We decided to look at both possible interpretations, and because of that, we won't put the statement on Truthometer. We also made the decision because the cost estimates vary. What would a single-payer system cost the federal government? The highest profile single-payer plan is one promoted by Senator Bernie Sanders. Under this plan, as a patient, all you need to do is go to the doctor and show your insurance card, says Sanders' website. Bernie's plan means no more copays, no more deductibles, and no more fighting with insurance companies when they fail to pay for charges. Well, what about fighting with the government? And what about different plans that people have right now? Some plans have, copays that aren't as expensive as others and different deductibles. So what I'm saying is it's not a one size fits all for private insurers either. So everyone's paying, Aisle 3, Diamond and Silk. Thank you so much, Aisle 3. Thank you for always watching. Thank you. Diamond and Silk played tape of Trump's unedited comments after the Charlottesville protests. Without a doubt, he said those protesting the removal of the statue and the counter-protesters are good people. The others are not. He said those protesting the removal of the statue and those counter-protesters are good people. The others are not. Yeah. Aisle 3, exactly. We should see the unedited tapes of. I have to go ahead and play that, so I will definitely get that Diamond and Silk tape. I have to see that. If you can put the link on here to the their YouTube channel, that would be greatly appreciated. But Aisle 3, you're 100% right, and that's the type of thing. Aisle 3, he should do that. Trump should go ahead and play the entire. Just tweet out the entire everything he said, because Charlottesville is like the liberal Alamo. They are they don't, to them, that poor woman who passed away, who was killed there. You take extremely charged, highly enraged people. It doesn't matter if you're quote unquote fighting the racists. Yeah, that's fine, but you should probably just let the racists walk by. And the worst thing for a racist or a horrible person or a bigot or a prejudicial person or somebody who's just horrible is to not pay attention to them. It's the worst thing for them. But if you're like, oh, we're going to beat you up, we're going to fight you, well, if you're that racist, you already kind of have a screw loose in your brain anyway. It's not like normal people join the Klan or neo-Nazis. Not like they're like completely happy with their lives. To hate a whole bunch of people, you have to probably have not that great of a life. You're missing out on a lot. So then the whole thing's, we're going to fight them. Like, no, that's not, we learned from Martin Luther King Jr. We learned from Gandhi. We learned from just movements that are successful aren't movements that beat hate out of people. It doesn't work that way. You have to go ahead and simply, like you said, take things into context. So Aisle 3, I agree with you, and thank you so very much. That was, unfortunately, a deadly photo op for the Democratic Party. Didn't work out for them, like nothing works out for them. Because they're a bunch of miserable, corrupt, evil imbeciles. And then I get from people, I remember when I was on the left, I get the brainiacs, the Einsteins, the geniuses are like, oh, well, because of Charlottesville, other protests, the neo-Nazis and the Klan, they were outnumbered. It's like, yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. Obviously, the vast majority, 95, 96, 97, 98% of the country is not an insane, crazy racist. There are people who think that all Trump voters are racist. They're wrong. They're wrong. And they're going to lose again. Wisconsin and Michigan and Pennsylvania haven't voted for a Republican since the 80s. Wisconsin hasn't voted for a Republican in the presidential election since 1984. Michigan and Pennsylvania haven't voted since 1988. They voted Obama and Bill Clinton twice. So spare me the whole, oh, they're all racist thing. No, they chose Trump. Because Clinton is obviously, from super predators to calling Mahatma Gandhi a gas station attendant, all of these things. It's not about, you don't fight racism physically. That's stupid. You go ahead and you try to educate people, and God forbid, if people on the left would ever, God forbid, say, hey, you know what? Even a racist person is human. Why don't we change his mind or her mind? Why don't we say, okay, your mentality is wrong. If you said something stupid, okay, well, maybe you can apologize for it. And hey, that comment was hurtful. But with them, it's like, oh, let's make their life miserable. Let's go ahead and ruin their lives and boycott and kick them out of their jobs and hurt them and hurt them and hurt them and make them feel pain because we're so much more righteous. But that only breeds hate, dummy. So stupid. That's why you lose all the time. That's why you complain all the time. And that's why Democrats will lose in the midterms and lose to Trump. And then what's going to kill them is that Black and Latino and Asian and Jewish and more, you're going to find more Jewish voters, more Black voters, more Asian voters, more Latino voters voting for Trump. And they're not going to know what to do with themselves. All their propaganda, from the social justice, identity politics, to the Russia did it, to the neoconservatives, to the whole everything, it's going to come crashing down. Polypharmacy, I love you too. Thank you so much. Thank you, Polly, for watching. And I'm just glad you watch. And I'm glad you've been watching since the days of Bernie. And I appreciate that. I think that Maduro Mike, thank you, Maduro Mike. First Clapper turned on Obama. Now he is turning on Brennan. Yeah. This is only the start of them turning on each other. I love that. So let's go ahead real quick before I continue with the single payer. Brennan's rhetoric is becoming an issue, Clapper. That's hilarious. The poor guy, the guy doesn't want to secure. I want to just tell you that I think his security clearance, well, just to let you know, it's becoming an issue. And, what can I say? Other than, don't take my clearance away. Please don't take my clearance away. I love it. I love it. It's so hilarious. That is so hilarious. Real quick, so let me read this. So Sanders pegs the price tag for his plan. It was $1.38 trillion per year during the first 10 years. This is based on an analysis by Gerald Friedman, an economist at the University of Massachusetts, Amherst. However, there's a great deal of disagreement and controversy about this number. Jonathan Oberlander, a health policy management professor at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Kenneth Thorpe, a professor of health and policy management at Emory University, put the cost at $2.4 trillion a year. Okay, it's substantially higher. A team from the Urban Institute put the number at $2.5 trillion a year. Okay. Let's just look at So Medicare and health is 1.17 trillion. So just Medicare alone, the federal government spends, this is 2017, 1.7 trillion. And the US budget, so total spending for fiscal year 2017, 1.7 trillion. How on earth would you go ahead and have even 2.5 trillion for all 300? There's 40 million. There's 40 million Americans on 44 million Americans on using Medicare. There's 320 million Americans that would then have Medicare for all. If we currently spend 1.17 trillion, how do you just double that to 2.5? A little over. You're doubling it to. You're more than doubling it to 2.5, and Bernie's plan is 1.3 trillion a year. But how does that work? Medicare and health, 1.17 trillion. That's in 2017. Federal spending in 2015 is 1.05. Oh, I'm sorry, billion. My bad. I'm looking at. Oh wait, wait. No, I'm sorry. I'm looking at a different graph. My bad. Sorry. I apologize. I'm looking at. So hold on one second. So total federal spending. So hold on one second. U.S. budget 2007. I apologize. 2017. It says here 1.17 trillion. So I was wrong before. So I was right on say. So it's 1.17 trillion. So I was right. Okay. Another graph I was looking at is wrong. Okay, so 1.17 trillion on Medicare. So how much Medicare U.S. budget 2018? So if you look at the federal budget, I guess 2017 is a better national priorities project here. I'm looking at a chart. It's 1.17 trillion. Okay, so I don't get it. If you're 65 and over, if you have Medicare, how is it working out? Like, how difficult is it to go? So there's only 40 plus million on there. Tell me your stories here. How is it? What's it like? What kind of problems do you face? There's Medicare fraud. There's a whole lot of issues. So, all right. So let's go ahead. I apologize. This is kind of interesting. Okay, so we currently spend yearly about 1.7 trillion on Medicare. So in 2017, Medicare accounted for 15% of the federal budget. CBO projects net Medicare spending to increase from 583 billion in 2018 to 1.3 trillion in 2028. Net Medicare spending. All right. And it'll increase gross share of the federal budget from 14 to 17%. So let's just continue really quickly, and then we'll get to. No, I'm not tweeting. I'm just looking at a whole bunch of things. I just want to. All right. So, what's the difference in cost? Broadly speaking, single payer programs are broad and far more cost effective than American medical care. But why would they be cost effective? Having a one payer rather than many individual private insurers cuts down on overhead and drastically reduces the need for advertising. Okay. Which can account for as much as 15% of total expenses for private insurers, according to Robert H. Frank. But aren't there aspects of government-run bureaucracies that are inefficient? But exactly how much of this savings will translate to the United States is open to interpretation. By and large, lower cost estimates assume bigger savings in administrative expenses. How would you say it? The government is known for wasting money, as well as bigger savings from lower prices that the federal government would negotiate. How much does the federal government take in taxes? And not everyone would want the single payer system. Some people want to keep their insurers. What would happen to the insurers under Bernie's plan? According to the Congressional Budget Office, the federal government took in a bit under $3.3 trillion in revenue in 2016. Even the most expensive cost estimate for Sanders' plan is smaller than that. So if this is what Trump has meant, he's wrong. So yeah, but that's the point. 2.5 trillion a year is would be a great percentage of what the federal government took in. How much does the federal government spend on health care? This is trickier to determine. This is trickier to determine due to program overlap and scattered budget line data, but we created a back of the envelope calculation based on information from the Congressional Budget Office and Department of Veteran Affairs. The chart below includes both payments for the federal government and lost revenue. So 1.38 trillion. Medicare and health, that's what I was quoting. That's the number I was quoting. So 1.3 trillion. Bernie's is estimated around 2 trillion. If you look at his, but that's 1.3 trillion, not for all 300 million Americans. So how does that work? Can somebody explain that to me? Maybe there's a Bernie supporter, or maybe I'm looking at something wrong. And if Bernie says his plan is, and I think Bernie Sanders is a beautiful human being for, wanting to tackle the issue. However, I don't know if I've spent more time focusing on the cost of wars overseas and the trillions we've spent on war and the interest on that money as well, because it wasn't even budgeted for a while with Bush. But Sanders pegs the price tag for his plan at 1.38 trillion. We currently spend 1.38. Well, in 2016, we spent 1.38 trillion on healthcare. But that's not for all 320 million Americans. That would be for probably around under 50 million Americans. How would that work? And that's the lowest estimate. Bernie's cost is the lowest estimate. So I mean, it makes sense what I'm doing. Nobody knew it was complicated. Nobody knew it was complicated. Exactly. So my thing is this: it's 1.3 trillion under Bernie's plan, and we spend 1.3 trillion, but not for all Americans. I might be because okay, the ACA marketplace subsidies. So I might be not okay. So it's more than 40 million. So I was wrong about that. But 1.38 trillion. How many people? So it's 40 million for Medicare, and how many in the ACA? Let's say. So enrollment. Let's see. So about 10 million people. So you're looking at 45, 50, let's say 60 million people. Let's say the 1.3 trillion. Christian O'Brien, thank you. Christian O'Brien, one of my favorite teachers of all time was Mr. O'Brien, one of the great teachers I've ever had in my life, history teacher. So there you go. Sorry, 20 million. Okay. 20 million people. Nearly 20 million people have gained insurance since 2010. So, let's see. No, hold on one second. 32 million, sorry. The move of 18 million with coverage first, enact 32 million by 2026. So 18 plus 40, let's say you have 60 million. So maybe I was wrong on my initial figure. How do you go from 60, let's say 70 million? How do you go from 70 million to 320 million? And you're already spending 1.38 trillion right now. How does that possible? Some other problems with making the comparison Trump does. We should note, caveat, Sanders' plan is just one possible version of single plan. Okay, well, they don't even know which version they want. So there you go. And the transition is what. So anyway, I'm sorry I spent all this time on this, but I wanted to just. It doesn't make any sense. When you're spending over $1 trillion, not for 300 million people, 320 million people, but for let's say 70 million or 60 million or 50 million people. I could be. I admit I might be wrong on the number of people that 1.38 trillion encompasses. But let's just say 70 million people. Let's say 100 million people. You're still going to triple that to 300 million. How does that work? You're not going to save 200 million in advertising. Then Vox, Bernie Sanders' 32 trillion on Medicare for All plan is actually kind of a bargain. Okay. The federal government, this is Vox, the federal government would spend a lot of money on healthcare, but overall U.S. health spending would be about the same as otherwise projected. U.S. health spending, does that encompass what the government currently pays for Medicare? Because I read you the 1.3 trillion for the federal budget in 2016. So let me just go read you this, then I'll get back to the Mueller probe. This is Vox. That's exactly how much federal spending would increase over 10 years under. But federal spending increase over 10 years is different from you're spending 1.3 trillion on Medicare and health now. Bernie single, and that's not for 300 million. That's for, let's say, 70 million. It's not, I think it's less than that. But then how do you go from $1.3 trillion for 70 million people? And I think it's a lot less than that, to 1.3 trillion or 2 trillion for 320 million. How does that go? So this is all like, the savings over 10 years, but it's like, yeah, the transition isn't going to be fun. This is how much federal spending would increase over 10 years under Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All, according to a brand new estimate from the libertarian-leaning George Mason University. Before you question the source, you should know that left-leaning Urban Institute came up with the exact number in 2016. It sounds like a lot of money, and conservatives hopped all over the figure. But there's a lot of ways to think about 32 trillion, and one might be it's actually kind of a bargain. Mercatus is projecting a $32 trillion increase in federal spending, above current projected government expenditures from 2022 to 2031. In terms of overall healthcare spending in the United States over the same period, however, they are actually projecting a slight reduction. There's the rub. The federal government is going to spend a lot more money on healthcare, but the country is going to spend about the same. Yeah, but people are going to have different needs in the future as they do now. And some people are going to have lower premiums with private insurers. Some people are going to have higher premiums. Lower spending is driven by lower provider payment rates, drug savings, and administrative costs. Okay. When you consider a universal single-payer program would, number one, cover every single American. Okay. Number two, eliminating uninsurance. Yeah. Provide much more robust benefits. That's up in the air. That's not exactly cut and dry. Covering more services than get covered right now. Really? My buddy who has English said his family does not like the NHS. Then it starts looking like a good deal. That paragraph alone makes me queasy. All right, I'll stop talking about this. But what we spend right now does not cover 300 plus million people. So, and if I'm wrong, on something, please let me know. Like if I'm John Segerman, HA, love the show. Been watching your transition to more conservative ideals. Love it. Single payer, bad idea. Single payer equals government regulation of behavior to reduce costs. Like being told what to do. Exactly. No, that's true. That's true. Absolutely. Could you imagine though? Like, I mean, if you're a smoker, wouldn't your rates have to be higher under a government-run healthcare? What if you smoke? What if you're a drug addict? What if you're, an alcoholic? I don't know. Truth teller, thank you. If I'm this, just a quick kind of just sobering, sitting myself down and saying, yeah, single payer. We spend 1.3 trillion in the federal budget right now, John, on Medicare and health, but that doesn't cover all 320 million people. And I mean, there are certain like issues, like for example, so John, you're 100% right. You don't want the government to You don't want the government to go ahead and have that much say into what you do, or have any say at all. But it's just, I mean, Mueller probe, meddling in midterm elections, that's the thing. Like, they don't even talk about single payer because they don't. The Mueller probe is meddling. They're focusing on Russia because so they don't have to talk about single payer. Simply saying it would save money doesn't mean that it's feasible. Simply saying, well, people spend, the country would spend a whole bunch of money anyway. Yeah, but there are different types of private insurance. And how do you know that everyone's going to be happy with government-run insurance? And of course, the issue of pre-existing conditions, but there were Republican plans that took that into account. You don't need the ACA to take that into account. So private insurance. So right now, 65% of people. I love how they don't give the CDC. 65% of people percent of persons under age 65 with private insurance at time of interview. So 65% of people under age 65, according to the CDC, have private insurance. What makes anyone think that all 65% of these of the people in this figure will be okay with spending more for single payer? I mean, like, I could be drastically wrong in what I've stated, and if I am, I'm open to, being like aware of what I was wrong on. But it's just interesting how nobody really, like, that's why you need the debate. That's why you need Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to debate Ben Shapiro. You need that debate. You need that debate. You need that discussion. You need discussion of not just, well, it'll save money in 10, 20 years. That's not how things work, because you don't know how the transition. How much will transition? Okay, so the whole you'll keep your doctor thing didn't happen. If it's 2.5 trillion, the Urban Institute put the number as 2.5 trillion. I'm being generous now. If it's 2.5 trillion and it's 1.3 trillion, so if it's 2.5 trillion estimate per year and we're paying 1.3 trillion not for all 320 million people, how does that make any sense? If I'm wrong, tell me. Before we're approaching a little over an hour and we're going to end soon, but I for people who aren't interested in single payer, I apologize, but tell me what you. Yeah, but who cares? I mean, it doesn't. My whole thing was, who cares who wins the debate? Have the debate. It's not about who wins or who loses, who looks good, who looks bad. Have the debate. Millions and millions of people. Am I wrong in this? So, if in the federal budget for 2017, it was 1.3 trillion for Medicare and health. Healthcare. Let's see. So it's like fiscal year 2017, $3.98 trillion budget. Okay. And let's go ahead real quick. Just want to see something. So it's like impossible to get like just a regular. So yeah, it's like I might be off on some numbers, but if I'm off, let me know. No, I'm not off. No, I'm not off at all. So you spent over $1 trillion. Well, 1.1 trillion, and he goes to 2.5 trillion. Not even for. That's like game over right there. And then discretionary spending goes to healthcare also. Total mandatory spending, like half goes to 1.25 trillion in 2015. It's just always over 1 trillion. 1.1, around 1.1 trillion. Koch brothers already funded a study. So let's look at the Koch brothers study. The Yahtzee won in a single-payer healthcare countries. The quality is lower. Patients are put in queues and get prioritized. For instance, you may be too old to get certain types of treatment. That's how you save money. The Yahtzee won. Yes. Yes, I agree with you. Koch brothers Medicare for all. Thanks to the Koch brothers, we have more proof that single payer saves money and cares for all of us. This is the nation. Well, but how does it care for all of us if you're spending around 1.1 trillion in Medicare and health in the budget, and it would be 2.5 trillion per year. So you're spending right now 1.1 trillion for Medicare and health. for about 50 or 60 million people, because there's only 40 plus million, a little over 40 million in Medicare right now. That's how much Democrats' single-payer healthcare would cost over 10 years. $32 trillion in 10 years. Okay. So $3 trillion a year. That's gonna not even, but it's not. You're paying a little over $1 trillion a year, and you're not even getting a third of all the Americans, of every American in the country. They're like, these estimates of future savings is nothing but propaganda. You don't know. You have no idea. They've not explained how $1 trillion in healthcare spending right now from the federal government that doesn't go ahead and take care of 100 million people will suddenly go, if it's 2.5 million to take care, 2.5 trillion to take care of 320 million people. They don't explain how you get from 1.1 trillion or so to take care of about 50 million people to 2.5 million to take care of 320 million people. They still haven't really explained that. Koch brothers, Medicare for all would save trillions. This is Think Progress. It would save money. Yeah. In 10 years, it would save money. How are those 10 years going to be, especially for people who don't want? And what about the impact on the economy? And how much are taxes going to be increased? Well, you wouldn't have to pay premiums. Well, not everybody pays the same premium. Not everybody pays the same copay. So, I mean, how on earth could you calculate? A single-payer Medicare for all system would reduce the amount of U.S. spends on healthcare by more than $2 trillion. Streamlined administrative costs under the plan would save another $1.6 trillion. When was the government ever known to streamline anything? That means over the next decade, the U.S. projected to spend more than $33 trillion. Significantly more than the $32.6 trillion. You're okay. Significantly more. 33 trillion is, I guess, significantly more than 32.6 trillion. But if you have the economy tank because people are burdened with taxes, that's not very good. Anyway, $1.7 trillion divided by 40 million, 42,500. The books are cooked. Yeah. I think the 40 million figure, though, Lawrence, you're 100% right. Thank you, Lawrence. I think it might be 50 or 60 million because it's 44 million. Then I think there's more people. But it's still, let's say it's 60 million. They say $32 trillion price tag. Just do it by a yearly basis. You don't even have to go into this 10-year plan thing. Not everybody would want that. That's the thing. It's like, Medicare costs $583 billion, but it said Medicare and health, 1.1 trillion. So Medicare and health is 1 trillion. So I don't get the whole. I don't get the. Well, you'll save so much money. Yeah, air pollution. But other countries have 10 million, 20 million. We have 320 million, and we have other countries don't have 400,000 plus 450 soldiers around the world. You know, the whole like, well, other countries can do it. Well, yeah, but we're not Australia. We're not, Denmark. To get a pie chart is like impossible. Just one pie chart. That's all I want. It's like found one, now I can't find it again. It's unbelievable. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for bearing with me on this. And what is the tax rate? Let's go ahead. And what's the tax rate in UK? Wow, 45% tax for people making over 150 pounds, thousand. Wow. $45 tax. So you're making if you make like around $200,000, you're gonna 45% tax. Thank you, Sonra's Gaming. Thank you. Um, 3.8 trillion, and this is 2015. My God Almighty, U.S. budget 2018. It says 1.8 trillion for healthcare or mandatory spending. 2018. That's not for all 320 million people. So Congress quietly passes a budget outline with $1.8 trillion in healthcare cuts. It says 1.8 trillion there. So, my God, it's like impossible to. What percentage of the U.S. economy is healthcare? Oh, forget. Now I'm getting lost in these numbers. Okay. Toggle of bail gun. Democrats set the ACA subsidy ceiling at $45,000, meaning they consider anyone making more than that is wealthy and able to pay the same as billionaires. Yeah. Toggle of bail gun. Thank you so very much. Toggle of bail gun. Thank you. So we spent one health subsidies by major category percent GDP says 1.5 trillion in 2017. And this study says 2.9 trillion to go up by 2028. But that's not for all 320 million people. So maybe let me know if I am. Healthcare, Medicare, and Medicaid, around 1.1 trillion for fiscal year 2016. Okay. That's not even so I don't get it. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. Sorry to inundate you with this, but the Mueller, the reason that Democrats focus so much, one of the reasons they focus so much on the Russia probe is so they don't have to talk about these numbers. If you're paying over 1 trillion every year in the budget for healthcare and Medicare and health and other health care related services in the federal budget of close to $4 trillion, let's say 3.8 trillion, whatever. And it's not for 320 million people. It is for, well, let's just say it's for 50 or 60 million, because there's about like 44 million on Medicare right now. How do you go from 1.1 trillion for about 50 million, 60 million people to 2.5 trillion, or Bernie's cost of 1.3 trillion to 320 million people? Let's just use Bernie's original estimate of 1.3 trillion for all 320 million people. It doesn't make any sense at all. Give me your thoughts. Thank you so very much for listening. Thank you so very much. I will be back in a couple of hours. And please check your notifications, hit subscribe. I apologize for spending so much, but I just, you're spending $1 trillion now for a fraction of the entire population. And then you're going to spend a little over $1 trillion for single payer every year. It makes no sense. And if I'm wrong with the numbers, which I could be, let me know. Thank you so very much. Let me know in the comment section below if I'm wrong with the numbers. Because the whole thing, well, we'll save this in the long term. It's like, well, no, if you wanted to implement the system tomorrow, obviously you're either admitting that it would, instantly lead to increase in taxes and the transition would be costly, but in the long run, you'd save money because you're relying on the United States government to streamline costs. When has that happened? People have horror stories who are on Medicare right now, and the VA horror stories. Christian O'Brien, we will leave it on. Let's have Mexico pay for it, AJ. Yes, Christian O'Brien, thank you so very much. Everyone, thank you so very much. Thank you so very much. God bless. I'll see you in a couple hours. To my super chat, thank you again. Thank you.